And there we
We're
are. All
live.
right, we're live. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. And I keep saying, every time I call it a show, I catch myself and I'm like, is it a show? But yeah, I guess it's a show now.
It's a
Small Business
show.
Spotlight. Today we're talking to Kate Chernis, and she's awesome. I just want to preface by saying Kate is awesome. Lately is awesome. And everyone on her team is fantastic. I honestly, like, Chris is fantastic. This Lauren is amazing. I mean, Jesus, dude, you guys you have like an amazing team out there. But
Thank
Kate,
you.
go ahead and introduce yourself and please tell us a little more about you and what you do right now, and then we'll get into your journey and stuff like that.
Thank you. I love you. And by the way, the pull-up bar is working great for you because those pipes are looking good. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm Lately from Lately. Everybody, hi. So lovely to meet you. And Lately is it's actually the only social media management platform that creates content for you. So we use AI to instantly atomize podcasts just like this into hundreds of social posts with the video clips and other magical things. But that's like the short description. But Drew and I were just kind of bonding on Washington, D.C. because in my other life, which is where he is, I was a rock and roll DJ. And my last gig was broadcasting to 20 million listeners a day from XM satellite radio, which is on New York Avenue there in the Northwest or Northeast. Can't remember now.
New York. North Avenue's got. I think that
Northeast.
Northeast. Yeah,
That's Northeast. Yeah, that's quadrants are the thing about for anybody who's ever had to drive through Washington D.C. It's very difficult, right? Because they designed it so you couldn't, right? It was
and use the word design very loosely.
Yeah, that French guy who is it? He did the same. DuPont. Right. Yeah. Oh yeah, L'Enfant. Right. Yeah. So, anyways, it's the best way to learn DC is to get lost in it, which I did with I had a Toyota Tercel, a 2-door, stick, 4 gears, as cheap as they could be, one side mirror, not two. And what was great is I could park that thing anywhere in the city, and I didn't care if anybody bumped me. But I remember like cruising around. Like, it was a big deal if I could learn to. I lived in the Southeast at Eastern Market, so if you can learn to go through the Northeast and get to Georgetown, that took some doing, and I could do it pretty quickly. After a while, you just learn all the ins and outs. And there was this one section over towards Georgetown where there was a long straightaway with like 4 or 5 lanes, this one area, and there were some bumps, and my little car would catch some pretty major air there. Which, like, and when you're younger, like, you're not thinking about like, this is ruining my shocks. Maybe this is dangerous. Like the first time I had my husband in that car with me, he's a guitar player, and he was a kind of a rocker and a big deal in my world, and he was like kind of freaked out, and I thought, oh my God, maybe he's not very cool.
Yeah, no, that's hilarious. And you know what's funny? The DJ thing comes up there, right? Because first of all, you got the mic, which is obviously the thing, the headphone stuff. Yeah. But the ability to engage people through voice, right? And it's something that it's a talent. It's something that you have to hone and build on, right? And so that skill set comes in nowadays. And I bet you didn't think it was going to come in this handy nowadays, right? Like
I didn't. And actually, so on a couple of notes, right? So when I was in radio, I had to work a long time to figure out what my radio voice was. And it sounds more like this, Drew. So you're listening to XM50, The Loft, right? It's a different voice.
Easy listening.
There you go. Yeah. But it took me a while to figure out like what that was. And it was about being soothing, but not too sexy, and being, welcoming, and, not too off-putting or whatever. And then to figure out what the persona was behind it, and I'm kind of goofy by nature. So I love the idea of being like cool and goofy and trying to project that, and again, it's a persona that you're wearing. It's you, but it's like another you, mm-hmm. And, it took me some years of experimenting, and I used to record myself and listen to every show, which is what I encourage all my sales teams to do on their Zoom calls, because it's instantly embarrassing when you're not doing something right. You can hear it right away and be like, oh God, I got to change that. But these days, and I'm not sure if anyone had mentioned this to you, but I actually use Dragon Naturally Speaking voice activated software. So I have a partial permanent disability, and I can't type at all without extreme pain. And so I have to talk to my computer. So the irony is I'm still talking for a living, but to your point, I hear everything that I write. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes a big difference. That makes a huge difference, actually.
Huge difference.
Because people, oftentimes when I'm reading something that someone writes, I'm like, you're not listening to what you're writing, right? You're not hearing it spoken out loud, because then you would change how this phrase and how this works. Because people read it, when you're reading something, you're reading it in your own voice in your head, right? But when you're writing it, you're not necessarily doing that. You're writing what your thoughts are, which are not necessarily in your speaking voice. It's really fascinating.
That's a great tip, by the way, for any entrepreneurs listening or fledgling marketers, is to read everything out loud before you push send or publish. And that's something we've all experienced. You know, when you're texting someone and you're just thinking, oh, he sounds like an a-hole, but like, really, he didn't mean it that way. You know,
read it before you send it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like for me, I have to really rely on emojis a lot. You know, what's nice, so in our own Slack channel, our company Slack channel, lately, I get to be myself a little more, which I appreciate, because the team, I know the team, they know me, they know what I sound like, they trust me, and I don't have to put it on quite as much, you know, but like out and about, I have to really think about, like you said, how I sound and put some serious effort into doing it, because the point, right, is to get people to do what you want them to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, be persuasive and be influential and that kind of thing, and you know, and be a leader. And that actually segues very nicely into your role at Lee, which is your CEO. You're a female CEO of a startup that's kicking ass. What's that like? Tell me more about your journey. How'd you get there? How do you like it? You know, tell us more about you.
Yeah, well, thanks for asking. You know, I love it, of course. I mean, if I didn't love this, I wouldn't be doing this, but it's a wild ride. I mean, before we got on here, I told you today that like I found a really expensive error and the other day, and it was so costly that like I had to go back and ask a couple of people not to take a paycheck, right? And that feels, we've been here before in one way or the other. So all of that isn't new, but like, it's amazing to me how bad it still feels, because there's no one to blame except for me, right? Like you said, I'm the CEO, so the buck ends with me, and it doesn't really matter how the mistake happened or who caused it or anything like that. You know, it's all my fault. It's always my fault, right? And that's the burden that you choose with this job, because it's not just your team who you have to hold up and not let down, but your customers, of course, and yourself. And in my case, hopefully other women or other underdogs, and certainly investors at the same time. But, you know, most of the time, so Chris, actually, one of the salesperson that we were talking about before, he was on an interview and somebody asked him, what's startup life like? And he had the best description ever, which he goes, it's awful, awful, awful. Oh, some good news.
No, that's pretty freaking accurate, actually. You know, I mean, but you know, it's funny because I talked about this with another guy, Neil Wainwright, a few weeks ago, and I wanted to shoot at him as well. But cool. Neil's like a startup mentor. Right? He's lived startup life for the last 20 years. And he said something similar, but it you know, it wasn't quite as eloquent. It was more like people don't get the struggle. They don't understand the struggle involved in startup life. They see that the glamour and the glitz, and they see this company that sell for $5 billion, but they don't see what went into that company starting up, right? And what goes into that company, the struggles they go through. Like you mentioned, that $21,000 mistake, right? That has a huge impact on a startup. I mean, and the people that have to not take a salary for a couple months. You know, as the leader, as the CEO, like you said, that's your responsibility. You're taking responsibility for that. That's a heavy freaking burden to bear, you know? And who would volunteer for that? You know, like if they knew that up front, like if you told someone tomorrow, hey, I need you to, in 6 months from now, I need you to take responsibility for a $21,000 loss for the company. And then ask 25 people to take I mean, I don't know how many people you asked, but you know, ask 5 people to take no paycheck for 6 months. Can you do that for me?
You know, so my co-founder, Steve Blood, actually always reminds me when I'm scared or something, he's like, broadcasting to 20 million listeners, that's terrifying. And then I think, oh my God, you're right. I would never do that now. Right? Isn't that crazy? Yeah. You know,
I mean, but 2 listeners is worse. but yeah, to that point, yeah. But again, everyone kind of has their own things, right? Their own strengths, their own things that they.
Yeah.
And and the threshold for discomfort and different kinds of discomfort, right?
Yeah, and what matters is, and we were also talking about this as a team, or even maybe to someone individually, but like what matters is, okay, this, can I swear on your show? I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
This shitty thing happened, so move on. What are we going to do? How can we prevent it from never happening again? I mean, this happens to us all the time. Shitty things happen all the time. Worse, much worse actually. And you just look at it and say, okay, well, how do we prevent it from going forward? How can we solve, and do we have to do now to move forward? And then you get to cry a little bit if you want to, or yell or whatever, but you that has to be a short period of time, right? Because there's more important things going on. You just got to move on and pick your head up and make it happen, and then motivate the other people on your team to like keep going with you at the same time. That's the worst part, is like when I feel bad, how much do I want to drag down everybody else, right? Now, sometimes it's important for me to share my human feelings, because so that they know that like I am a human. I'm not just the CEO. We run a pretty flat organization, Drew, which is hard to do, but I feel really important. Hey, Alex. Hey, Emma. But like, it's partly because I choose to show them that I'm a human also. But I also can't run around being like, my whole day is ruined, and like kill. They're salespeople. Those guys, they need to be in really good vibes all the time. Like I don't want to kill their mojo. So it's sort of a weird, delicate balance. But I find, we were talking about on the aspect of leadership, I find like other women leaders actually showed me that, and I found it incredibly inspiring, because it made me understand I could be them, right? Number one, and that it wasn't, the role of leadership wherever you are isn't left to only people who have had privileged lives, and went to really good schools. Anybody can be here. I was a line cook and a DJ. There's no money in radio, people. Let me tell you, it's terrible. I was at the show, the best radio job you could get in the whole world in 2004, 2005, and 2006, and I made $50,000, which was, not nothing, right? Howard Stern made a lot more, obviously.
Yeah, no, obviously, I think that's also the other thing too, is like you, by being where you are, by being in that position you're in, right, on so many different levels, right? You have the level where you're accountable to your team, and you have to be that leader of your team. You have to have that balance of like, I'm going to show them emotions so they know I'm human, and they know that I care, and I gotta be able to temper that with, let's keep going and do the good work, right? Let's go forward and keep pushing things forward. And that's tough. It's powerful to be able to do that, though. And I think the other thing you mentioned, though, which you mentioned almost in passing, but I think it's worth calling out, is that you saw other women leaders doing that too, and that's what allowed you to inspire yourself to be them, to be like them, and to do that yourself. And I think that's why it's awesome that you are where you are, because and that's why it's important that we highlight folks like yourself, and like those people who are breaking those barriers, who are the female CEOs, the people who are non, I hate the word minority, but I'm going to use the word minority CEOs, right? Yeah. Because it is rare enough that it's worth highlighting, and at the same time, you don't want to get caught up in like, oh, we're going to focus on the fact that it's so rare. We want to actually just use that to highlight, to inspire, to make that a more commonplace. When we don't have to highlight anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like the life mission, hopefully, of everybody, right? Like, so there's certainly, you want to better yourself, of course, right? That's a big one. But I do a meditation every day with Sam Harris. I love the app. It's 10 minutes, and so I have to find 10 minutes, which is hard to do, but I was just doing one earlier, and he talks a lot about how meditation not only is for you, but it's for to bring the best you to all the people around you, to help lift them up as well, right? And so I think about that a lot, and how important that is. Like, I want to be a better wife, a better leader, a better friend, a better daughter, like a better cousin, all those things, and the best way to do that is to help others at the same time, right? You know what I mean? I mean, I don't mean to sound so corny, but like, so let's put that into example, right? One of the things I liked about those two to particular women leaders that I worked for was that they let me, I call it fall up, right? So they let me make mistakes because they knew I would fall, but they knew I would fall upward, right? They trusted that in me. And so, you had remarked how great my team is, and my team is great. We have stellar humans that work at Lately as humans, and also with their skill sets, and some of them I don't even think still know how powerful their skill sets are, really. But like Lauren, for example, when she started to work for us, she was so shy, and like you can see visibly on the videos that she did for all of the office hours, like the live office hours we do every week, her growth and confidence as a human. You can literally see it. It's incredible, right? Chris Bro is another person, right? Like, who knew? He was in radio too, just like me. Turns out he's the backbone of the company. He's our sales guy. Like, I think it's like 65% of our sales come from him alone. He's a beast.
I'm not surprised. He's freaking amazing. I love Chris, right? And we talking about him earlier, like just the humanity, the people, right? There's a reason I don't know what his title is, because it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
I have no clue what his title. I still don't know. I'm never gonna know. I've just given up on that. I'm gonna create a new title every time I do it, right? I forgot what I called him when I introduced you guys to my other friend. I was like the Chief Awesome Guy or something. I forgot what I said. It was something stupid.
It was great.
But that's literally what it is. But it's you're dealing with people. I think that's why I also like Lately as a company, because you're dealing with people. You're not dealing with, we'll refer you to our client representative about that. We'll refer you to this role about that. It's not a role. It's a person, right? You're referring to this person who can help you, who is able to work with you directly and help you. And I think that humanization is what's missing a lot of times, because you have, you call AT&T, worst example. I mean, they're freaking horrible. I don't get me started on them, but you're talking to a machine for 45 minutes before you even talk to a person.
I hate that. Yeah.
And then that person you're still a number to that person. You don't matter. That person knows you're never going to talk to them again. They have no reference number to know who the hell they are. So they don't give a shit how they do. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. The golden rule, right? Do unto others, that's the deal. And so, I've been working, so we have a new UI coming, so a new user interface, nice. Which you're going to be so psyched about. But we really have been, for the last few years, actually taking into consideration all the comments of our customers, and we want to make it easier to use, which in turn makes it easier on us, right? So less customer service, less engineering. Like it's not totally to be nice to you guys, but like there's a lot of reasons. And so Jason, my chief product officer, and I have been working together every day, and we're looking at the new components. The guys already figured out like the flow, and then how the product looks and the basic functionality. But then it's my job to go in with Jason and think about what the words are saying and try to put ourselves on the other side, right? So it's as simple as looking at a word like remove. Do we mean remove, or do we mean delete? Like, and is the person going to understand what that means? And is this button here, if it's green and all these other things are green, is that too confusing? Do we need to make it stand out? So it's like everything from treating customers with kindness, right, to then looking internally at those little teeny day-to-day components that maybe you guys don't actually notice, but we think about them, right? Mm-hmm. And it's for all the reasons you said. This is why, so we don't do any cold calls or cold emails, or we're actually experimenting with paid ads for the first time in 4 years. And I don't even think they've started yet. But the reason we stopped doing cold was because it felt bad. Like I don't pick up a call whose number I don't know ever. Never.
Yeah. No, I agree. And it's, and it's something that I've been struggling with myself, actually, in my own journey for through sales and that kind of thing, right? Because as in my field, you got to be the person for everything, right? I'm the CRM, I'm the salesperson, I'm also the coach, right? So I'm doing all the above. But I've always had an issue with sales. I've always had a story about sales, right? Specifically around cold calling, but generally about sales and money in general, and asking for money like that. And that's part of it, though. It's that ickiness about, I'm going to call this person out of nowhere. They have no idea who the hell I am. They have no idea what I'm doing. And now I'm going to interrupt their day to try to tell them why they need my services. Right? Yeah,
it is icky. That's the word. I mean, you're absolutely right. It really does feel so bizarre. And it's, I was thinking about, like, so except for COVID time. So when you make new friends, now, not dating or anything, just you're making new friends, it always feels so weird. In that same way, because you're like trying to get to know people, and I'm always having this memory of like or you're asking all the questions that you would ask. So where are your parents from? How is your family? Where'd you go to school? Like you're just trying to get to know people. And it's even that is so awkward sometimes. And, doing it in a way, I mean, the nice thing about social media is that it gives you that lead-in point, right? So it's that this sounds so obvious and everybody knows this by now, but it's easy to find anything about me and like have something to talk about in common right away, right? We always, when we do our webinars, like I'm always like kind of harassing people to get in the chat, be like, tell me where you're from, guys. I'm in Stone Ridge. And I do it first, type it in first, hello from, and then we talk about the weather. And I remember, I forget who had said this to me at some point, but there was, some maybe it's just a general phrase, but like how that people who talk about people who talk about other people are like down here, and then things are here, and then ideas are here.
Yep.
But you have to start here, So you talk about the things, it's the weather, right? And then you say, oh, my mom also, went to school in DC. So now we're talking about people. And it's not because we're vapid.
Yeah. Right. No, I like that I've heard that phrase as well. It's really, it rings true, I think, for the most part, in terms, for me, like you said, it's that initial level setting part, right?
Level setting
conversation is like, it's the first couple levels of that thing where, now after that point, now you can use that rule. That rule doesn't apply in the first conversation, right? Yeah. And it's like, to me, it's like Maslow's hierarchy of conversation, right?
Yeah. There you go. Right. Exactly.
Like you're down here for the people is the bottom thing. Like people and things are down here, right? But then ideas are up here. And if you can't if by our third conversation we're still talking about people and things, and we've had like maybe 3 or 4 conversations already, and I already know other things, the people, I'm probably gonna be like, okay, this is probably gonna be like a tier 2 person that can hang
out. Right.
Maybe even tier 3, depending on how bad
spark. Which is okay.
But the energy I get though from talking to people about ideas, that's a different energy altogether. And there's a time and place to talk about people and things and whatever, right? But I personally, I mean, and I think it's partially entrepreneurship. I think it's partially just me being me and the ADD person that I am. But I love ideas and like new things and creativity, right? Being able to create something new from scratch with someone. Like I remember being on a call with a guy that I did. He's an awesome web designer, and he did my website, and we're talking about websites and stuff like that. And I was like, dude, I think I really want to try to work with you on some things to try to help you make some connections, because I think you could do some awesome stuff. And we started talking about how we might be able to work together. And I remember leaving that conversation feeling so like energized and excited, like this is going to be freaking awesome. It's going to be great. It's awesome. I'm excited. And I was like, I wonder why I feel this way. I do that a lot. I like explore my own like feelings about why I feel a certain way. But it's like that energy about creating something from scratch. I think that, going again full circle back to lately, I think the cool thing about that is like, it is this like relatively new technology that's AI. AI is something that people throw on the word AI a lot, the term a lot, and they don't actually know what the heck it means. It's like crypto for anybody, and the cloud. No one knows what. I mean, some people do, but the average person's like, oh yeah, it's in the cloud somewhere. It's in the cloud, or like it's AI. It's AI. It's like, you know what that means? It's like, yeah, it's artificial, but it's intelligent. Yes, that's exactly what it means.
Yeah, it's funny. We didn't even actually know that what we created was artificial intelligence in the beginning. And this was a few years ago, but I saw that it was becoming a hot investment arena, and I was like, is what we're doing this? Is it? Okay. And then we decided to double down and make it more so, but also because it was the feature that everybody was drawn to. So it made sense to, invest our time in that arena. But what we find is that the exciting thing about artificial intelligence is how, when the human plays with the artificial intelligence, that's when you get the mind-blowing results, right? That's what gets like the 12,000% engagement that Gary Vee sees through us, because someone is participating, right, alongside the AI. So that's the money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and that's where the actual like the learning part of it comes, and the AI part of it comes, right? Because if you just like set and forget it, just get Hootsuite, because you're not gonna that's not what
right. There's no set and forget.
It's constant interaction and constant growth and constant learning on both sides, right?
Yeah, so, and that's awesome. Around what the inspirational touch point you made really is like, I love walking away from a conversation or a book or even a movie and taking the idea that was there and then figuring out how to apply it to something else I'm working on now, right? So that's my favorite thing, which is why I love covers so much from radio. I love somebody that turns something inside out or something that I know into something else. Same kind of idea, right? Mm-hmm. And I have a rule, which is that it's always right in front of me. So when I'm frustrated about writing something or I'm having a block, like I literally just look down at all the pieces of paper and sticky notes on my desk, or I'll start looking through emails, or look at the last thing I wrote, because usually you've already got the idea somewhere and you just need to metaphorically twist that channel, change the channel, right?
Yep.
And so like, that's a good feeling. And I think that comes with wisdom or confidence. I don't know. Like, I didn't always know that. I'm 47, Drew. So like, I'm old enough to have some wisdom now. And to have that confidence and there's, it's a weird sort of thing there. And I wrote about this recently, but like, it takes a little bit of naivety to be an entrepreneur. Because you have to be a little dumb, right? Like, so it doesn't occur to me that I can't do anything almost ever. Like, right. When COVID hit, we were lucky because we all already work from home at Lately, and we had a digital company with customers who mostly already also worked from home. So, and we also already had been surviving on $50,000 a year for $50,000 for 2 years. So 95% of the team hadn't been paid in 2 years. So we looked at each other and said, okay, same shit, different day. Let's keep going. Right. But like, and I couldn't also, because at the time it was just too much to even kind of fathom what was going on. So I just like said, okay, COVID, just keep going with what we're doing here. I can't even think about how that might affect the business. I can't factor in that at the moment. It's got to be a non, Yeah. And that's that kind of blinders thing. People say, you have to be stubborn or determined or whatever it is. And all those things are true. I mean, at the same time, you obviously have to be aware and listen to other people, but like, there's, I keep flying the plane, right, Katie? Yep. There's that I don't know how to say it. It's like I'm 9. That's my favorite age, Drew, because you're not. It's before puberty, right? So like, but you're old enough to walk and talk, and 9-year-olds are the best to hang out with. They really are. I find, I find it the most perfect age of naivety, like we're saying before, but also insight. And I think that's the mindset you want to be in to succeed, right? And it's also, that's who I am online. You guys know I'm like kind of a childish ding dong. We're doing cartwheels and heart you and all those things that I do, right? But that for me, if I can give you that spark, that kind of abandon or like by the way, I actually can do a cartwheel. It's not just an emoji. But
I cannot. No, but
you cannot. It's hard, actually. I almost injured myself when I was. My niece is 9, and I was showing her how to do one a couple summers ago.
Nice.
And can't do
my nephew's 10. I cannot do a cartwheel. I won't even try.
Yeah, it's hard, but that it's like that abandon, right? Where it's the same kind of idea. Like there's no, you're not an idiot, but like there's just this. It's like these things are like a non-issue. So and also then you have to have. I find that I have to be able to delegate to other people, to the people who have to pay attention to the dark stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I have other people do that. Steve does that for me. And then I can just keep on being in my cloud of dreaminess,
Yeah, but I think that's also important, and I think it's that, like, again, it goes back to the balance, another kind of balance, right. of balancing that optimism, that naivete with that foresight to say, I have to focus on this right now, and I'm gonna I know it's there. I know that these extra things are here, right? But I'm gonna delegate or kind of put it off for now, put it on the shelf for now, deal with that when I need to deal with it. For now, I got to focus on this right now, on the prize, right? And I think that's a really important distinction to make, and I think that's great. That's
it's hard.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
By the way,
it's always in the back of your head, right? It's still there. It's like it's not out of sight, out of mind. You're not 3, you're 9, right? So it's like,
right. And there's a million distractions, right? So I'm always like thinking, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? That's the most important thing, because there's a million little shiny objects that look cool. Ooh, we should try that. Da 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 da. And like, no, we don't need to try that. Like, just stay this course. And that it's hard for me to enforce myself, and it's really hard to enforce on the team as well too. Because I trust and love them, and of course, they're sentient and intelligent humans, always thinking about how to better the company. And so it's like this constant. I feel like I'm on this car ride. There's this dashboard all the time, and there's like this constant flow of traffic and weather, and kids riding by with bicycles, and birds flying over you or whatever. And then you just have to really, really, one of the metaphors I always use is like, there's 50 houses on fire all the time in my world, and my job as a CEO is to know which ones to put out. But the challenge is I actually really never get to put out any of them. So I can only give some water to some of them, or one of them at a time. And they change. Maybe they change every day, sometimes every hour, right? So that's the job.
Yeah. And I think it's like, to your point, I think it's less putting them out and more just controlling them, keeping the fires controlled so they don't get too crazy, kill the whole neighborhood. But one thing you mentioned again in passing, humbly, which I appreciate, but I do want to call out, you mentioned Gary Vee, right? Because you guys work with Gary Vee, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that. How did that come about? How did you guys get that going, and how's that going? I mean, like, tons. I mean, he's a huge personality, right? So how did you get lately in front of him? That's fantastic.
Thanks. Yeah, he's a really, really kind, wonderful human with like ACEs integrity, which might surprise you, because when you are have that much power, which he does have power, a lot of people don't have to be that way. But we met Gary because Katie, who's here, actually, I think it was Katie, she saw on LinkedIn one day that he had posted, "Oh, I wish there was an AI tool that would turn my long form content into like 40 social posts instantly." Mm-hmm. And Katie was like, "Hey, this is us." So I commented, and then we literally called in every favor of everyone we knew to boost my comment up with their own likes and comments, like friends, customers. Katie went crazy. We all did. Like, we just asked everybody we could, and we know how to trick the algorithm, right? So we got their attention, and then he was on our wish list. That's right. We had our manifest destiny, and we got at the attention of one of his teammates, Jim Thompson, who at the time ran Team Gary Vee, right? So Gary has his own arsenal of people that literally focus on his social content, and Jim got a demo and liked it. I think Lauren gave him that demo, and then we made him a customer, or I don't know if they were paying quite yet, but I think so. They were about to be paying, and so luckily I got invited to 4Ds, which is like the VaynerMedia day-long marketing course you can go to. And that was at Hudson Yards in New York City. So I went down there for the day, not to get an education on marketing, because I feel like I'm pretty good on that one, but I wanted to close the deal. And amazingly, Jim was on vacation that week, which is a bummer, because I just had this opportunity and I had to go. And so so you're in the room for 8 hours, and they bring in different consultants from throughout VaynerMedia to come in and give you 101 on everything, Facebook, just general marketing things, from 101 to whatever, because the mix of people in the class is all over the place. And then Gary comes in for like an hour and talks to the group, and there's like 10 of us in the room. So I spent the day out of the room because I had calls to make, and I was like doing my CEO thing, but I also tried to meet with the whole team who was using Lately and get to know them and see what their experience was. And so by the time Gary came in, so they're like, okay, get your questions ready. And I'm like, oh shit, I don't have any questions. So I'm like frantically like trying to think of something to say. And then he goes around the room and asks everyone to introduce themselves. And then he kept going around, and you could ask more questions, Mm-hmm. And so when he got to me, he asked, what do you do? And I told him artificial intelligence, automation. And he was like, oh, we would never use that here. We would never automate any of our social. And I was like, but your team is using it right now.
You already are. Yeah.
And he was about to move on to the next person. And then he to his great credit, he just looked at Nick, who was the cameraman in the room. He's like, Nick, who's using her product? And Nick said, Rawgun. And he's like, get Rawgun in here. So Rawgun comes in. And he's like, do you use Lately? And he's like, yeah, we love it. And I'd met Rawgun earlier, so I knew he was going to say that, right? Yeah. And it was pretty epic. And then, so of course, Gary uses his whole life as content. So this hour that he was in the room, they recorded it. We had to sign off on give them rights to use it. And so they broadcast it as a YouTube video. Mm-hmm. And my friend Ian Util, who's one of our customers, actually, a couple days later, he just sent me, he's like, here's a gift for you. And he recorded every minute that Gary had talked to me and put it in its own, contained video. And it was 18 minutes long.
That's
a lot out of an hour. That's a long time,
Yeah.
So that's how we got to meet them. But amazingly though, Drew, Gary, of course, forgot about us, I'm sure then. He wasn't using the product, his team was. And they were about to churn in COVID around February, March, because Gary doesn't need Lately, right? He actually has a team of people, his own team. And we were kind of freaking out about it. And then we created the video clips feature and showed it to Jim Thompson, who made a mock Twitter account on his phone, mm-hmm. fueled only by Lately and nothing else, and walked over to Gary and showed it to him. And then Gary was like, who's that? I want to meet with them. And we met with him the following Monday. So since then, he's been a really great advisor and friend to us. And we're learning from his team all the time. And we're thankful.
That's amazing. And I love that story because, well, there's so much about that story, right? That there's so much about that people can learn from. And for those people who are watching, all 14 of you, please, check that out. Just listen to that story. And if you didn't get to listen to it, clearly reminded to listen to it again, because there's a lot about that's pretty much encapsulates the entire entrepreneurial journey and how to do that right? You identify your strengths. So you knew you didn't necessarily need the marketing training, but you identified an opportunity to meet someone, that get in front of someone that you wanted to get in front of, right? You identified that was a networking opportunity that she identified. She figured, and you think, get to meet this person and get in front of this person ASAP, right? And elevate what you're talking about, elevate that to the top of his head, right? You did that. You did exactly that, right? And you made a point to do whatever you need to do. You met with his team to make that connection. Again, that one-on-one connection, so that you actually knew what they were going to say before they were going to say it. You knew what the feedback was. Even if they didn't say anything in the room, you had the feedback directly from the customers who were high-level customers, that you could now prioritize features that would actually feed their business. That's awesome. I mean, just there's so much there and richness in that story by itself that just dig underneath that. That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, I actually too. I mean, one of the other things I did that day was there was a dinner the night before, and the guy Nick running it asked, what are your wish lists? What do you guys all want? And I said, I want to meet with the senior marketing team at VaynerMedia tomorrow. And so that's one of the other reasons I was out, is because I was just literally walking around the room being like, where do you work? Who are you? And so that was, it was also, so this happened to me before accidentally, but because I wasn't around and doing my own thing, right? I got to be like, who the hell is that? Right? Kind of vibe. And I've learned that, and I don't really know I'm doing that, this is just part of my style. So when that has benefited me another time, I'll say, is when our first accelerator we went to, so like a startup accelerator, you go, you spend a few months with 10 other startups maybe, and they invest in this, an accelerator invests in you, and their job is to help accelerate the company, give you access to programming and people and engineers and things that will help move you forward. So we're doing our first one, and I quickly learned that all the quotes programming, like classes on marketing and all these other things, were like a huge waste of my time. And we had other problems at the time. We needed to get a product out the door. So we just really needed the opportunity to put our heads down and work and think about what we were doing and actually build this thing, and then worry about all that other crap later. And so I didn't go to any of the meetings. I didn't go to the investor pitches. They were like, come and practice your pitch. And I'm like, this is so stupid. You guys I don't know how to describe what I'm doing. I'm terrible at it. I was. And I was spending so much time having stage fright because I love being behind the mic when you can't see me. Being on a stage is hard, really a lot harder. And this is rarely in the beginning. And so I was totally having panic attacks, and it was just killing my mojo, my confidence, and my time. And so I just said, enough. And I was scared too, because I didn't know I could say no, because I thought like, I have to kiss these people's ass and do whatever they tell me. But the day I walked into Marat's office and was like, I'm not doing this anymore, he was just like, who are you? You're the best. I'm in love with you. Right. Like, and he said that I created like this allure with all the investors, because they were like, well, why doesn't she need us?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the first trick you learn in startup life. And if you haven't watched Silicon Valley, do, because it's all true. But like that whole, oh God, it's like that high school thing of like, get her number, that play hard to get, like all that. It's not my nature, Drew, because I'm very direct, ask my husband. He always knows exactly how I feel.
For better, for worse.
Yeah, for better, for worse, right? But like, so I've still had to learn that. It's very, very difficult for me, and get coaching on it from advisors and from some of my teammates as well. I remember sorry to keep talking. We were,
that's what you're here for. So.
I remember, so Jason is one of my co-founders, and we were at a cocktail party, and everyone gets nerves. And I remember him like being a little bit nervous to meet people, because it wasn't his nature to do this. And I don't know why I was forcing him to do this, because back then we thought all the founders had to go do all these things together, which is not true. But you do see that in Silicon Valley, or you see them all doing it together, and it's a waste of time. But so here we are, and I remember him feeling so awkward. And I remember saying to him later, I was like, you should totally walk away from a conversation before it's done. Like, that's your Achilles heel. You have to do that. I don't know if he'll remember this, because like he would totally be there at the point where everyone's just saying, yeah, like there's no more conversation to be had. And I'm like, that's when you walk away before that part,
What was that? I forgot his name. The guy's name. I forgot his name. The
Ehrlich?
Ehrlich Bachman. Yeah, he's awesome.
I'm Ehrlich in our scenario, even though technically I'm Richard, but in vibe, I'm Ehrlich.
Probably a little more competent than Ehrlich by quite a bit more. I'm pretty sure.
He has his moments though, like very much like Steve Carell, right? Like where he has these moments of genius. But
yeah, no, he does, absolutely. But
yeah, I'm also the foul-mouthed, offensive hooligan of our group.
And everyone needs one of those at least. So.
Yeah, I like to think so.
That's great. So we're coming up on time a little bit, but we're a little bit over. But that's fine. I think this is awesome. This is great content, and honestly, I love the stories. Stories are
Thanks.
Can be so powerful in terms of illustrating points that are just like abstract otherwise, right? Until you see them actually played out and how things work in the real world, it's easier to see that. And maybe you don't necessarily distill all of the different like nuggets you might get from just laying them out, but what you get out of a story is important, right? You still get the value out of it and see it in action. So I love the stories, and thank you for sharing those so much. As we're closing out here, like what are some things last minute things you want to share with other women out there, other aspiring women CEOs, or other people in general who just want to do more, to go on the same path you went through, or a similar path in terms of being a leader in a startup and the challenges you faced and overcame, and still overcome.
Yeah. I mean, I think for women in startup land, this just came to mind. I remember someone So what I'm not good at is numbers. I was a fiction writing major, Drew. My brain works in that way, although I can look at spreadsheets analyzing marketing data all day long, but when you put a dollar sign in front of something and my brain just goes kind of, weird. And like, it takes me a little while. I'm slower at that. And I need to have other people around me pulling data together in a way and giving me snapshots so I can understand it and then obviously make decisions. And I remember early on a female investor shaming me for this, really shaming me and saying like, you can't you can't, possibly be, competent CEO if you're not all about in your numbers. And at the time we didn't have any numbers. So it seemed totally ridiculous. I mean, now we do, and obviously I'm on top of them, and we all know we have very great data that we look at all the time, but I still have to have other people kind of help me and translate that for me. And I remember thinking when she did that to me, it seemed like she was talking some other foreign language to me, because I thought, okay, I don't need to know how to change my oil. I don't need to know that. There is a guy who will do it for me for $30. Like, I can learn how to do it. I'm a competent enough human to learn that, but I don't really need to do that. And I feel the same way. Like, you don't actually have to be an expert at everything. You just have to delegate to other people and be very clear what your weak parts are. Obviously, trust the people who are doing that work for you. And there's nothing wrong with that. You don't need to be embarrassed or like. I was embarrassed for a long time to not really understand even like, what is it? I can't even say it now. EBITDA, EDBTIA, whatever that an acronym is about your spreadsheet with all the numbers in it. I don't know. See, like, I don't know the stuff, like, and I don't care. Right. I there's other more important things that I do know that I need to know. And so I think that's a big one. And I think standing up for yourself is really, really important. And I have a bit of someone called it a chip on my shoulder, and I really want to tell them to go fuck themselves, because, being an underdog is not about having a chip on your shoulder. But it's really important. Thank you, Andy. It's really important to not call people out. That's not what I mean. But to just, make people aware when something's uncomfortable for you. And in fact, someone did that to me recently. I made them uncomfortable, and we talked about it in a DM, and I stood my ground. I respected her, and I was like, in my mind, I was thinking, this is crazy. But like, I respected the fact that she stood up, because I know from my own experience, how much courage that takes. And then I also respected the fact that we were able to have a discussion about it, and I was able to hold my ground, and she held hers respectively. So I think that's when you're an underdog, especially, like, it's not whistleblowing and it's not canceling. You don't need to cancel fucking somebody out just because they're doing something remotely offensive. Or you don't need to like take it to the 10 when it's a 2 or when it's a 4 or when it's even a 6, right? Because like most of the time, most people's intentions are good, or they really don't realize it, So anyways, that's all about what we talked about before. Do unto others, golden rule.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. No, I love all of that, and and Chris has joined. Thanks, Chris, for joining. Kandri, thanks for the comment.
Yeah, we've been talking about you all day, Chris.
Yeah, it's all bad stuff. How no one knows what your actual job title is. No one knows that, obviously.
Superhero.
But not just me. But no, and to your point, I think it's that ability to outsource, effectively. And I don't mean outsource outside the organization, but outsource in terms of outside of yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And being able to understand where your limitations are, what are you good at, what are you not good at, and accept that. You don't have to, like you said, you don't have to be good at everything. It doesn't make sense. Like, why would I spend an inordinate amount of time, energy, and money to train myself how to do an Excel spreadsheet when I don't need to do that? I can just hire someone to do it, and we can work well together. And they're expert in what they do, and I'm an expert at what I do. Same idea. Like by that same logic, it's like saying, okay, you know what? Then you don't need to hire anyone to build a company for you or with you. You can do it all yourself. You should be the engineer. You should be the market person. You should be your CFO, CEO. Why do you have those different roles? It doesn't make any sense. Why do you even have an investor? Go learn how to be an investor. get all that money, then you fund yourself by that logic. It doesn't make any sense.
No, and the shaming part really, like I remember also more recently, someone said to me that I didn't have the skill set to be a CEO. And they're right. I don't have experience being a CEO. I don't, you know? And I remember being so upset about that because, boy, it felt really bad, you know, because I agreed with him, you know? And I called Steve and I cried because I was like, oh my God, he's right. I can't do this. I'm not equipped to do this. And Steve is always my shoulder that I cry on all the time, my co-founder. And he was like, dude, that guy is a fucking idiot. Like, he can't do what you're doing, and he's not doing what you're doing. You know, like, he has no idea. And he's so good at repositioning what's really happening in a way that I can see it for real, which this whole team does that really well, by the way. I've found that to be one of the most essential characteristics that I need about people around me is to have them put into perspective what's really happening, you know, because my first instinct is it's all my fault, right? That's my job, you know? So yeah, don't let people shame you into anything ever. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I don't think there's a better place to end than that idea, because I don't want people to gloss over that at all. I think that's a great way to end. So, Kate, thank you so much for being here. This is awesome. This is phenomenal. And anyone watching who tuned in late, please go back and watch the whole thing, because it's gold. It's phenomenal. There's so many awesome stories that illustrate different ideas, different ways to be an amazing CEO, amazing startup person, entrepreneur in general. A lot of mindset stuff, a lot of reposition. I mean, reframing is 80% of what I do. It's all mindset stuff, right? So, like, I know the value of that, and it's so powerful to have those people in your corner. For those of you who are watching, if you don't have people like that in your corner, get them. Find people like that in your corner. If you need someone like that, call me, because ultimately, like, you need those people in your corner who are able to reposition and reframe stuff, because you're going to get in your own head. Like you said, like the feedback is, and I'm talking over even doing what I didn't want to do. So I'm going to leave it on what you said, which is yeah, I'll leave it there. Thank you so much, Kate. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Everyone, you guys are awesome. Chris, you're more awesome than I am. Thank you for saying that. But if you guys like the video, hit the like button, hit subscribe. Please reshare this. Anyone in your life who is an aspiring entrepreneur or is an entrepreneur right now needs to watch this video. So thank you guys so much. Kate, thanks again.